What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash overview to do with you guys. This is the Spyderco Native Chief, and as you can see here, it's basically a super long version of the Spyderco Native, if you have ever handled that knife. This knife was purchased and actually donated to the channel by Mr. Chris Gonzalez, and I really appreciate that. I've been talking with him a little bit, and Chris, forgive me, I cannot find the exact conversation, but I seem to remember you saying, and I could be completely wrong, so if I am, I'm sorry. I feel like I remember you saying you watch my channel with your son. I can't remember your son's name, but direct shout out to your son. I think that's really, really cool. If you guys watch knife content together, I think that's awesome. But anyways, really, really cool guy. This is the gentleman who basically suggested I do his monthly knife shopping for him, and that the original deal was I pick a knife that I'm interested in, he buys it and then sends it to me, and then I review it and send it back to him, and he decided, you know, with this first one that we did, he decided to just let me keep it. So despite my, you know, my usual protests, they're no match for the generosity of the knife community. Giving knives is awesome. If you guys ever have an opportunity to do it, don't feel like you have to give it to me. Give knives to other people. Give them as gifts, you know, to people who don't have a pocket knife and could use one. I think that's excellent, absolutely. So thank you so much, Chris Gonzalez, for this amazing gift. It's much appreciated, and it'll be cherished forever in my collection. Anyways, if you are new to my channel, I like to upload knife content daily. So if that sounds good to you, go ahead and subscribe and hit notifications. Turn them to all so that you can be ready to go the next time I upload a video. I also have a Patreon, so if you'd like to support me and my channel in any way, just follow the link in the description of my Patreon, have a look around, and you can choose whatever route you'd like to take. It's much appreciated. Anyways, let's go ahead and get some measurements on this guy. We have a brand new tape measure, and you can see here we have a direct overhead view finally, which is great. It'll give you guys the accurate perspective on the things that I'm talking about. However, the lighting still sucks, so we're going to get there, don't worry. Overall length on the Native Chief is coming in at 9 inches. This is definitely a big knife. Tip to scale, you're looking at about 4 1/8 inches. And then on the actual cutting edge, you're probably looking at 3.6 inches. So, you know, absolutely, absolutely big. Let's go ahead. I was going to wait. Nah, you know what? Let's do the size comparisons first. Let's go ahead and move this guy down just a little bit. Up against the Ontario Rat Model 1. Rat 1 coming in at 8.6 inches overall, so you can see they're quite a bit longer than the Rat 1. Excuse me. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall. Again, quite a bit bigger than the PM2. That blade looks super skinny, but you can see they're up against the PM2 blade. Not quite as tall, but closing in on it. So there's quite a ways to taper towards that cutting edge. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue coming in at 8 inches overall. And last but not least, the Spyderco Para 3. Spyderco Para 3 coming in at 7 1/4 inches. Let's go ahead and give you guys an example of the action here. So this is a lockback. So it's one of those that you kind of have to just push down and shake. It's a little bit stiff, but it's, you know, it's definitely, I wouldn't call it like gritty or anything like that. It's just one of those that's going to have to break in a little bit. And truthfully, with the resistance, you know, how this locks in, there's no detent on this knife. It's just friction that's created, the tang of the blade riding against the lockback until it actually slides into place. So you can see the lockback slips up, and the tang is riding on that lockback, sort of the curvature of the tang. And then once it slips into place, it clicks. That click is very satisfying. Owners of the original Native and G10, whether it's the one with the liner or the titanium one or whatever, they all have that satisfying click. I think a lot of people are going to be really well aware of it. Because the blade is so big, you actually can get a reverse flick out of it. You really have to have developed that that muscle in the back of that finger there. Sorry there, I didn't mean to gesture at everybody. You really have to have developed the muscle in the back in that finger there, and you can get it. It's not 100% reliable. It's also not really without wrist. You can't really do it this way. You can, you're just gonna have to whip it. Most people are just gonna open it like that. Once this breaks in, I'm sure as soon as I push that down, right now I'm having to shake it a little bit, but I can still manipulate it with one hand. It's a little bit nerve-wracking with that blade being as thick as it is. You know, you don't want to swing it down on your fingers. And once it gets to here, it definitely clicks into place, like right there. So if your fingers are in the way, it's going to come down and leave a nice racing stripe on your finger. Let's go ahead and weigh it here real quick. Overall weight of the Native Chief coming in at a pretty good 3.95 ounces. In fact, that's a really good 3.95 ounces. 3.99, call it 3.95 to 4 ounces, something like that. So those of you who subscribe to the idea that about an ounce an inch of blade is good, you know, I don't know if people go by blade length only or total, or I'm sorry, cutting edge only or total blade length, but if you go by total blade length, this thing's awesome. At over 4 inches of blade and under 4 ounces, I think that'll make a lot of people happy. Let me give you guys a measure of blade thickness now that we can finally do this. Make sure and zero it out. This is not an expensive tool. This is a very cheap tool, but it'll do. Blade thickness on this guy coming in at, I don't know that that's 100% accurate. 0.12. Let's go again. Just a little bit ago, I got 0.13. Yeah, I'm going to call that about 130 thousandths. It might just be 125 thousandths. It looks to be about exactly the same as the Ritter Hogue. I'm glad to finally have that tool. So let's go over the anatomy of this knife. Obviously, we have a very long satin finished CPM S30V blade. This is one of the US Golden Colorado line knives. It was designed by both Eric and Sal Glesser. You can see their insignias there. Satin finish looks nice. It's pretty much what you'd expect from the standard Golden Colorado line of Spyderco's flagship models. It looks much like the Native 5 linerless, you know, like the Spyderco PM2, etc. Same thing. You have a an ever tapering blade. So this is the most needle pointy tip that I have ever seen on a Spyderco knife. I mean, you can imagine here with this constantly tapering down towards the tip, and the blade's not super thick to begin with. Very, very fine tip. Now, this is going to be a problem for some people. It seems like a lot of people expect any knife over $100 to be absolutely indestructible and hard use oriented. That's simply not the case. I don't mean to sound preachy, but different knives, you know, it's just like we talked about blade shapes on Saturday. Different blade shapes are designed for different things. So a blade like this is definitely going to excel at puncture tasks or pokey tasks. You have to be cognizant of what you're trying to poke into. If you're trying to stab into a sheet of steel, probably not. You're probably gonna, you know, damage that tip. Now, if you're trying to, you know, poke into a really thick fruit or some really sort of, you know, dense cardboard or something like that, then yeah, this blade's gonna do just fine at that because there's not a lot of material there at the end. So just be aware of that because Spyderco's warranty will not replace your blade if you break the tip, and you'll either have a brand new medium length Wharncliffe or you'll need to pay for an entirely new knife, which is not something that I think a lot of you would be happy with considering this is a fairly expensive knife. Like I said, the blade's not super tall, but I mean, I'd still call it fairly tall. So it's got quite a ways to taper down to the cutting edge from the spine. Feels nice and thin behind the edge. It is a flat ground blade. This is the type of blade that during slicing tasks, it's really going to glide through material without an issue. It's really going to be a nice performance cutter. But because of the length of the blade, the tasks that it's really going to excel at over a lot of other knives out there are very specific. 9 inches is not really an EDC sized length, but the weight of this knife, you know, the 4 ounces, it leads me to say that, you know, it really is just not a bother to carry. You know, if you like long blades, maybe you're like me and you don't necessarily need to carry a blade over 3 inches. This one is fully justifiable at the weight and carry profile. We'll get more into that. Taking a look at the scales here, you can see that we've got Spyderco's typical blocky, very blocky peel ply G10 scales. It's going to offer plenty of traction, but it's also going to tear up your pants. Kind of wish Spyderco would, you know, soften this area up. Maybe back here just do kind of the faux bolster thing on the G10 and leave this all soft back here so it comes in and out of the pants easier and it's not ripping up your pants, but not that big of a deal. You can see there are holes there for different pocket clip mounting positions, so tip up, tip down, right and left-handed carry. This is a fully ambidextrous knife with the lockback being an ambidextrous locking system. You do have pins there. aiding in holding the lock back in place, much like on the Para 3. I'd imagine during disassembly, which I haven't taken this knife apart, you pull everything apart and the scales will just slip right over the top of that pin. You've got the standard Spyderco screws back there that are a little bit bigger than the little tiny size that I don't like. You can see there on the rat. Hate that size. That size is just fine, no problem. You do have a little lanyard hole back there for some 550. The seam on the lockback is just absolutely perfect. Looks really nice. It just looks like one long continuous backspacer. I really like that there. Good job, Spyderco. They've always done a good job with that. It's always flush and seamless. Moving over to the other side, you have the Spyderco pocket clip that's got the hole in the middle. Some people don't like that. I don't have a problem with it. There's not a large amount of the knife sticking out of the pocket, but there's some. But the overall amount versus the total length of the knife, it's really a pretty small percentage of it sticking out of your pocket. In my opinion, the pocket clip is mounted in a good position. It's kind of right down the body of the knife, or right down the center, when close to the center. If you're thinking about the scale, it's more to the right. If you're thinking about it with the blade, in contrast with this side, it's a little more to the left. So they obviously split the difference between those two, or maybe they didn't think that much about it and just ran it straight down towards the pivot, but it carries nice. The pocket clip is in a position where if you're holding it back here, you can feel it digging into your palm a little bit. Choked up here, you can't feel the pocket clip at all. This is most of the time how I'm going to hold this knife, given the total length of it. I know some people like to hold it back here, and you mind there's some situations where you will. If you do that and you're doing continuous cutting for 30 minutes at a time, you're probably going to feel that pocket clip. If you choke up next to the blade, you can cut all day, you're not going to feel it. The only thing you're going to feel is the blockiness of the scales, and it's really not that bad. I'd appreciate it if Spyderco did a little additional rounding on those scales. They do it on the Para 3. See what I'm talking about here? It's just a little bit of additional rounding, and it almost looks like it's exactly the same, but it's not. These are not quite as rounded off as these. Just a little teeny tiny bit more, get rid of that blocky feeling. I think the knife would be a lot more comfortable all the way around, but I want to emphasize this. This is not an uncomfortable knife. It's actually really comfortable in this choked up position up here. You've got nice functional jimping. There's jimping on the inside of the choil. Choke up and make use of that super long blade. It's a very, very comfortable knife. All the way around, fit and finish is typical of Golden, Colorado Spyderco, The centering is dead on. This works on that bushing system, so you can crank the pivot all the way down and it's going to be the same every single time. There is no blade play up, down, left, or right. The longer the blade is without an external stop pin bracing on the blade, the more likely you can feel a micro amount of blade play. So I'm really, really impressed on this knife that there's absolutely no blade play up, down, left, or right. That lock back is a really, really strong lock on a knife that has a blade that's not emphasizing durability. This knife is really going to appeal to people who want a long blade, who like a big, long, slender knife, but don't want it to weigh a lot. If that's what you're looking for, you're really going to like this knife. The overall thickness of this knife is pretty much exactly the same as your PM2 and your Para 3. Let's go right here. You can see the overall thickness of everything is pretty much exactly the same. Carry profile, long and slender. So the Para 3 is taller, the Para 2 is taller. This way, it's only the length in total of this pocket knife that makes it actually bigger or take up more room in your pocket. But at 4 ounces, it's just not bad. The downside to this is that it is big. This is not a knife that, if you're in a room full of 10 people, 10 random people, and you pull that out and you can recreate the simulation as often as you want, my guess is that 9 out of 10 people in that room are going to be kind of startled by this. It doesn't matter where you live or anything like that. I'm just saying, if you could recreate a simulation where you've got 10 people in a room and you open up this knife, even just to open a box, it's going to startle at least 9 of those people. It's freaking huge. It's scary, and that is a downside. And I know people always say, I don't care what other people think. I care what I want. That's fine, but it is going to, with that mentality, at some point, it is going to be a little bit problematic for you. Not everybody understands that most of us carry knives as tools, And a lot of us, like me, we carry tools that are probably a little oversized and probably a little bit excessive for what we need them for. We carry them because it's fun and because we like it. And that, honestly, that's why I would carry this knife. I've been carrying it for a couple of days and I really like it, but the only people I've shown it to are people who know that I carry knives and don't have a problem with it, and they all say the same thing. Wow, that is a big sort of stabby, weapony looking blade. It really does look like that. That's how it appears to people. You can't control how people perceive that. That is just simply how they perceive it. So that is a downside. I can't think of anything else that I can really complain about. They don't put steel liners in here. I'll show you. They used to on the old Spyderco Native, but they don't do that. The integrity is all in this back backspacer here. It's actually the lock back. In my opinion, you don't really need the liners in there. I think the thickness of the G10 is going to be plenty strong, and where the G10 may be lacking in any structural integrity, the lock back is certainly going to make up for that. This is an awesome knife. It's priced at $156. When I look at the Native, I'm like, why does the Native cost $140, $145? I mean, that's like a $110 knife all day. To me, if I could, slap what I think an appropriate price tag would be on the Native 5 and the Native Chief, the Native 5 would be a $110 knife and the Native Chief would be a $135 knife. That's honestly what I think. The fact that it's $156 is, it's like, that's a little bit high, but it's like I always say, everything that I buy could be between 10 and 15% less. And I have no idea if my math is correct. So in that case, $20 less, $21 less than it is. Am I going to cry over $21? No. I can absolutely recommend this knife. Just keep in mind, it's huge. So if you're looking for an appropriate EDC size knife, this isn't going to be for you. But if you're wondering, is the Chief made well? Is it ground well? Does it deploy effectively? Is it easy to deploy, easy in and out of the pocket? Is it a good cutting tool? Yes, I absolutely think that it is. Just keep in mind some of those potential negatives for some people, because it's definitely not going to be for everybody. That's going to be pretty much it for today's overview and review, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Chris, again, thank you so much for the donation. I love this thing. Despite it being as big as it is, I absolutely will carry and use it. I think it's really, really cool. If you enjoyed this video or at least found it entertaining, please leave a like. If you'd like to take a look at my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, then please subscribe to my channel, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day.